The quietest words of a woman can erase a man's will if he doesn't know his worth. Robert Glover. You wake up next to someone who says she loves you. She smiles. She listens. She doesn't yell, doesn't insult, doesn't betray. And still, something inside you is fading. You can't explain it clearly. There's no visible conflict, no drama. But piece by piece, day after day, you're losing yourself. You're no longer the man you were. You don't chase your goals like you used to. You hesitate more. You apologize more. You live smaller. And worst of all, you can't even say what's wrong. Because on the surface, everything looks fine. She's good. She's kind. She's caring. People tell you you're lucky. But deep down, you feel caged, silent, like your fire went out and no one noticed. If that's you, you're not crazy. You're not broken. And no, you're not too sensitive. You're just waking up to a very uncomfortable truth. There are traits some women carry, subtle, almost invisible, that slowly pull the life out of a man. Not by malice, not by violence, but by energy, by patterns, by unspoken dynamics. And most men are too ashamed to admit it, because we were taught that being with a nice woman should be enough, that if she's not hurting you, then everything's fine. But that's not how this works. Relationships are not about absence of conflict. They're about presence of truth. And the truth is, some connections erase us quietly, not because she's evil, but because no one ever taught us to see the hidden traps, the soft manipulations, the emotional weight we silently carry to protect the peace. And slowly, without noticing, we trade our edge for harmony, our power for acceptance, our vision for comfort, until one day we look in the mirror and don't recognize the man staring back. So let's name it. Let us bring light to what hides in the shadow. Because this isn't about blaming women. It's about understanding energy, understanding how masculine identity collapses, not just from trauma, but from subtle erosion. She doesn't have to yell to make you shrink. She doesn't have to control to make you doubt yourself. Sometimes, she just has to lean on you in all the wrong ways, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, until your life becomes an endless performance of keeping her okay. This is not love. This is emotional servitude dressed as connection. And the worst part, she may not even know she's doing it, because this isn't always intentional. It's passed down, from mother to daughter, from generations of women who didn't know how to hold power without taking his. And unless you see it, unless you name it, you'll keep fading, smiling on the outside, dying on the inside, carrying a silent grief no one talks about, a grief that doesn't come from abuse, but from the slow, daily abandonment of yourself. If these words resonate, subscribe to the channel. More people need to hear the truth that's been hidden from them. And join the Telegram for deeper, rawer insights. You'll find the link below the video. One of the most dangerous illusions a man can fall into is the belief that a nice woman can't hurt him. That softness means safety. That empathy means alignment. But emotional energy is far more complex than it appears. And the most draining relationships are not always loud. They're quiet, gentle, full of smiles and sweet words. And yet, something inside you collapses. The first hidden trait is subtle control through helplessness. She never tells you what to do, never orders or demands. But her sighs, her silences, her passive discomfort, they shape your behavior. You start adjusting, overthinking, managing her emotions like you're walking on glass. She never says you're failing her, but you feel it anyway. You begin to shrink, to hesitate, to carry her weight along with your own until you're exhausted, and she still calls it love. Most men don't see this at first because it feels like care, like closeness. But what's actually happening is emotional outsourcing. She's offloading her anxiety, indecision, sadness onto you. And without realizing it, you become her emotional regulator, her therapist, her anchor. And the moment you stop performing, she withholds affection, connection, presence, not to punish, but because she herself can't function alone. This slowly builds a dynamic where you don't feel safe being honest. You hesitate to say what you think. You begin to censor your truth, not out of fear of violence, but out of fear of disappointing her, upsetting her, making things harder. And that's where your masculine core starts to decay. Not because you're weak, but because you're slowly trading your authenticity for emotional survival. You start to live in reaction. You begin to anticipate. You develop a second layer of attention, not for the world, not for your mission, but for her moods, her energy, her tension. And in doing so, you disconnect from your own instincts. You lose access to your inner compass. You start to question yourself, even in areas you once felt confident. And all of it happens without a single fight, without a single insult, just endless, slow, emotional weight. Science backs this. Studies in emotional labor show that constantly managing another person's emotions triggers chronic stress and cortisol imbalances. Men in such dynamics often report burnout, depression, and loss of motivation, even when their partner appears supportive. The nervous system doesn't care how sweet her voice is. It reacts to pressure, and pressure that hides behind softness is still pressure. That's why so many men walk away from good relationships feeling hollow, not because she screamed or cheated, but because he disappeared trying to keep everything okay, because his truth was never really welcome. Only his role, his stability, his ability to hold it all together until he couldn't anymore. And the tragedy is, she might still say she loves you and mean it, but love without awareness is not love. It's dependency, it's fusion, it's survival dressed up as romance. And unless you see the cost, you'll keep paying with your life force. Quietly, slowly, completely. Another trait that seems harmless on the surface, but deeply destabilizes men, is chronic emotional vagueness. She never clearly expresses what she wants, never states what she needs, yet holds you responsible for the outcomes. You hear phrases like, "I don't know, do what you think is best," or "whatever you want is fine," followed by coldness or distance if your choice doesn't align with her unspoken expectations. This passive pattern may seem small, but it breeds deep insecurity. It places the man in a double bind, forced to lead, but punished if he missteps. And over time, that constant guessing game corrodes confidence. You begin to second-guess everything, not just in the relationship, but in life. You hesitate with decisions. You overthink your instincts. You lose the ability to trust your own clarity, all because clarity was never mirrored back to you. This type of emotional fog creates a state of hypervigilance. You're constantly scanning for signs, clues, micro-reactions. It feels like trying to read a map with no markings. And what makes it even more dangerous is that it's unspoken. If you try to name it, she may look at you confused and say, "I didn't say anything," or "I'm just tired," which leaves you questioning your reality. Slowly, the ground under your feet becomes unstable. You don't know what's real anymore. You stop speaking up, not out of fear, but out of learned futility. Because what's the point in bringing something up if you'll just be made to feel like you imagined it? Men in these dynamics often withdraw. They become silent, not because they don't care, but because communication feels like a trap. The rules are invisible, but the penalties are real. And when a man stops expressing, he stops processing. He begins to internalize everything. The pressure builds quietly and often erupts in the wrong direction. Burnout, addiction, detachment, emotional numbness. This isn't a dramatic collapse. It's a slow leak of life force. And it starts the moment he realizes that honesty isn't safe, not because she attacks, but because she disappears. This is not about blaming her. Many women genuinely don't know they do this. It's a survival strategy they inherited from mothers who were never heard themselves. Women who learned that being direct made them difficult, so they became soft, unclear, indirect, and handed that silence down as love. But for the man, this creates a paradox. The more he tries to connect, the more alone he feels, because nothing lands. Nothing is met. His presence doesn't call forth her presence. It's absorbed into a fog, and that fog starts to live inside him. Real connection requires feedback, requires tension, requires the courage to disappoint each other. Without that, the relationship becomes an emotional performance. He plays the strong one, the grounded one, the clear one, while she floats between moods, always fine, always tired, always just a little bit elsewhere. And slowly, he becomes her emotional GPS, until he no longer knows the way back to himself. One of the most invisible, yet corrosive traits is emotional stillness, a kind of passive detachment that slowly drains the man's spirit. She's there physically, she responds, she listens, but there's no real aliveness, no feedback, no spark, no true engagement with his world. His ideas are met with soft nods, his passions with neutral smiles. There's no confrontation, no encouragement, no resistance, just a flat, quiet acceptance that seems peaceful, but in reality is suffocating. Over time, this absence of reflection turns into psychological starvation. A man can survive chaos, but what truly breaks him is indifference dressed as harmony. What makes this so dangerous is that it's often mistaken for being easygoing. People around you might say, "You're lucky. She's not dramatic, not reactive, not controlling." But deep down, you feel unseen. There's no challenge, no tension, no real meeting. You start to feel like you're carrying both souls in the relationship, pushing forward, dreaming, deciding, creating, while she just coexists. And as you keep trying to ignite something, anything, you burn out. The flame that once defined you flickers, and you don't know why. Because you're not being opposed, you're being ignored, emotionally, energetically, spiritually. This isn't about women being wrong. Many of them live in freeze mode, a trauma response that looks like stillness, but is actually shut down. They've been trained by life to be quiet, agreeable, self-contained. So when a man shows up with energy, depth, desire, they freeze even more. They don't say no, they just go silent. And that silence kills slowly. Not because she means to harm you, but because her walls have become her personality. And the more you try to reach her, the more you lose yourself in the void. Men in these relationships often become depressed without knowing it. Not in the clinical sense, but existentially. They stop laughing as much. They stop creating. They stop reaching out. It's like living in a house where the lights work, but the warmth is gone. You wake up next to someone, but it feels like sleeping beside absence. And the worst part is, you start blaming yourself. You think you're demanding too much, expecting too much, wanting too much. So you begin to compress your needs, mute your voice, adapt even more. And every time you do, you disappear a little more. Real love is not just presence, it's participation, engagement, energy exchange. Without it, the relationship becomes one-sided, and the man slowly converts from a partner into a caretaker. He starts to manage her moods, her silences, her lack of enthusiasm. He tells himself she's just tired or going through something, month after month, year after year, until he no longer remembers what aliveness even felt like, because he's buried it under politeness, peacekeeping, and low expectations. And all of it started with something that seemed so harmless: her quietness, her gentle stillness, her emotional absence behind a soft smile. Another trait that erodes a man without leaving scars is chronic dissatisfaction. It doesn't come in the form of shouting or direct criticism. It comes as subtle sighs, delayed reactions, small pauses before "thank you," the tone that says "almost, but not quite." She doesn't attack you. She just never fully receives you. Your efforts are met with a strange emptiness, like no matter what you do, it's never entirely enough. And over time, this eats away at your spirit. You stop reaching, stop offering, stop showing up fully, not because you don't care, but because caring has started to feel like failure. This is the emotional equivalent of working without feedback. You build, fix, support, love, and in return, you get vague discontent, not direct rejection. That would be easier to handle. What you get is emotional ambiguity. She seems grateful, but not really. She seems pleased, but not quite. You're always a few steps away from good enough, but she never tells you what enough actually looks like. This moves the goalposts indefinitely, and the psychological toll is massive. It breeds a low-grade sense of inadequacy, a constant state of striving, of tension, of trying to earn something that never arrives. Most men don't talk about this because it sounds petty. How do you explain that the tone of her voice crushed you more than her words ever could? How do you admit that the look she gives when you finally relax makes you feel like a failure? This kind of emotional erosion doesn't show up in arguments. It shows up in your nervous system, in the way your shoulders tighten when you come home, in the way you rehearse conversations in your head before bringing something up, in the way you stop laughing around her, not because she tells you not to, but because her silence after your jokes hurts more than criticism. Women who carry this trait often don't know they're doing it. Many were raised in emotional climates where nothing was enough, so they internalized that pattern and now live inside it, unconsciously projecting it onto their partners. They may genuinely love you, but their nervous system only knows how to live in mild disapproval. It's not about control, it's about survival. And unless you name it, it will quietly steal the joy out of your life and make you think you're the problem. In this dynamic, the man starts to disconnect from pleasure. Even in success, something feels off. He might win, achieve, create, but without her full emotional presence, it all lands flat. Her inability to receive creates a loop of emotional futility. Eventually, he stops trying, not out of bitterness, but out of quiet grief. Because no matter how much he gave, he never felt truly felt. And here's the most brutal part. This kind of relationship doesn't end in explosion. It ends in slow resignation. He stays, he provides, he shows up, but he is no longer there. His body remains, his spirit fades, and she doesn't even notice, because in her world, nothing's wrong, but in his, everything's already gone. There's a final trait that often goes unnoticed, but its impact on a man's identity is profound: subtle competition. This isn't loud, direct rivalry. It's not aggressive or openly defiant. It hides behind smiles, jokes, small jabs, backhanded compliments. It shows up when you succeed and she becomes distant, when you grow and she grows colder, when you evolve and suddenly she's less supportive, less available, less proud. It doesn't make sense at first. Why would someone who says she loves you pull away when you finally rise? But this is exactly how hidden power dynamics work, not through attack, but through withdrawal. At the beginning, she might have adored your ambition, admired your drive, encouraged your dreams. But as you start to embody them, as your world expands and your clarity sharpens, something shifts. She becomes quieter, less enthusiastic. Her body language changes. It's not hatred, it's fear. Fear that if you grow too much, you'll outgrow her. Fear that if you truly become who you're meant to be, you'll no longer need her. And so, without realizing it, she begins to tether you emotionally. Through guilt, through distance, through 1,000 tiny cues that say, don't go too far, don't rise too fast, don't become more than I can handle. This trait often forms in women who have never seen empowered masculinity coexisting with love. For them, power equals abandonment. Strength equals neglect. So when they sense it emerging in you, even in healthy form, their system panics. And instead of celebrating you, they begin to unconsciously sabotage the growth. Not through sabotage of your actions, but of your energy, your fire, your focus, your joy. They question your time. They question your choices. They say they miss you, but it's not really you they miss. It's the older version of you. The one who stayed smaller, more available, less threatening to their emotional safety. Men often don't know how to respond to this. You start to feel guilty for winning. You downplay your achievements. You soften your voice. You dilute your opinions, all in an effort to make her feel safe. But in doing so, you abandon your edge, and with it, your mission. Because a man who betrays his own evolution to preserve a relationship will eventually resent both himself and the person he did it for. This inner split is devastating. You become less alive around the one person who should make you feel more. And slowly, your passion becomes performance. You're no longer expressing, you're managing. What makes this even more painful is the social illusion that a supportive partner always wants you to grow. But not all women are ready to hold space for your full expansion. Some only love the version of you that fits their nervous system, the version that won't leave, that won't challenge them, that won't reflect their own stagnation. And until you see this clearly, you'll keep compromising your future to maintain her comfort. And one day, you'll wake up with a full life and a hollow core, realizing that you sacrificed your truth for someone who only loved your potential when it wasn't yet real. The most painful part of all these dynamics is not that they exist, it's that they remain unnamed. And when we don't name something, we carry it as shame. But what if the problem was never that you were too sensitive, too demanding, too much? What if the real issue was that you've spent years adapting to invisible forces that slowly erased you? It's time to return to yourself. Here's where to start. Stop gaslighting yourself. If something feels off, honor that. Silence is not safety. Track your energy. Notice when you feel most alive and when you shrink. Patterns live in the body. Write without filter. Journal daily. Where do I disappear? Let the truth surface without judgment. Test separation. Take space, even for a day, and see what parts of you reawaken when she's not present. Find masculine mirrors. Surround yourself with men who don't shrink. Their presence will remind you of yours. Say hard things out loud. The cost of silence is always higher than the discomfort of truth. If this video touched something real, subscribe to the channel. Let more people find the truth they've been starving for. Join the Telegram. We go deeper there without filters. Link below. Share this video with someone who's fading and doesn't know why. And if you saw yourself in these words, leave a comment. I no longer abandon myself. Let's see how many of us are finally ready to come home.